Nancy, I sent you an email this morning. I don't know if you got it or not, but Maria and I had a conversation yesterday, and I'm just going to run this down to you really quickly. Supportive Housing Coalition, in a contract that I have with them, they state that we are in a third party contract with TNC Management. Um, it's the tenant based rental agreement. Um, and I just wanted to know, is that true or not? Maria said yesterday that that was not true. There's no third party agreement. There's only a contractual agreement for rental that is solely um, regarding my name and not supportive housing in any way. So, and I would need that answer also in a written document or email if I may ask.
Okay, so Maria is correct. The only thing that we receive from supportive housing and what they're responsible for is the rent. And whenever you applied for the unit, they gave us a letter stating what they were doing. So they said, "Hey, we're gonna pay his rent. This is what we're going to do, and that's what we're responsible for." And so the lease agreement, since it is in your name, is your responsibility.
So Eric did an inspection, and there was no follow-up inspection. And somehow, and I mentioned this to John and Donna, because he didn't come back and do the inspection, so supportive housing were paying rent on an apartment that wasn't inspected properly.
Mhm.
So what that did was, another thing, Eric was trying to get me to
Well,
sign the
he's trying.
lease.
I'm
He
sorry.
was trying to get me to sign the lease before the inspections were even done. He mentioned the fallout was he mentioned that I wasn't technically inclined to go on the portal to sign the lease, but I was telling Eric that I didn't want to sign the lease because the inspections were not done and complete. And when he said that and made that remark, that's when I kicked him out my house. I told him that you have to leave.
To them is they're hearing top down on our monitoring and our audits that we've had so many findings that if they don't start to take action, we will lose the contract. If I lose the contract, I will lose 9 full-time employees, including myself. But more importantly, we would unhouse 230 people. So I'm not making up excuses. I'm just trying to give you that bird's eye view of like, I think they're also starting to panic a little bit. And so I made a mental note and I also wrote in a more concrete way, I need to come back to them so that they're balancing their duties. Like John is a director, so like he needs to balance his sooner.
Yeah.
But John did ask. It's the president and CEO of TNC, and we are. I'm also a member of the apartment association, so we have a code of ethics that we're supposed to work through. And John actually cited that and asked for a meeting. And I want you to know it's not just about you, but it's about how they do these violations, when they throw our name in, when they don't. Do they inform us of some of these work order challenges? Are they aware of their own rights and responsibilities? As a landlord compared to us. And I do want he came back to me and he said, well, Jerry, and I think this could have been handled better. I should have done this. They should have done this. I said, call a meeting. I'll support you. So I want that is happening tomorrow at 11:30. It may not fix everything right this moment, like Joseph and the mold and everything, but on a higher level, I want you to know that we do take that seriously. And because they're so big, TNC is so big, I can hardly not rent with them because they like monopolize the city.
Mm.
So I also want to say, if we do explore you moving, which I'm not gonna lie, I would really encourage you to consider moving, but only if I can provide you with these supports that you mentioned. Like if I could get you a moving truck, if we could help you with the moving costs of application fees, pay security deposit. And one thing that they were trained on in the past is if you have any income, they were trained, including Tanisha, under the old CEO, you always tell the participant no if they have any income. Well, not just you, all participants in this program are entitled to a copy of that inspection. And you should also be given a copy of whatever is going to the landlord.
This is my first time hearing that.
And I was gonna show you a copy, but I'm not fast enough. So
That's okay.
anyway, I keep promising you documents, but I thought I had a blank handy dandy, and of course I don't. But anyway, yeah, it's the housing quality standards checklist. It is HUD. I know you're pretty savvy, so you could also just Google it on HUD's website in terms of getting familiar with the form and the criteria. But moving forward, anybody who's conducting an HQS, whether it be me, coordinator, anyone else, you're entitled to a copy of that.
I didn't know that.
Okay. And another thing that they haven't always done that John is doing now is the landlord should be getting a copy of that. And I will also point out, if we were to determine, now we're not a lawyer, but if we were to determine, I've been in every 6 months, or I've been visiting Jerry regularly, you can make a note on there that says, I observed Jerry cleaning, I've observed Jerry spraying bleach on this, cleaning the oil, trying to ventilate. I love how they're like, open your windows to avoid humidity. You're like, dude, there's literally water leaking in my ceiling. So like, not only do you get the HQS, you're entitled to what we submit as a landlord responsibility versus what we would think would be your responsibility. Now, don't get me wrong, they can argue, and they can argue till the cows come home, but you would at least have a copy of that, and you would be very aware of where we stood. Okay, so that's another city, whatever it is, you and me as partners, Donna, Dorothy, whoever needs to come into this, I say multi-pronged because we're gonna have it contractual, financial, and programmatically. How can we support this? My goal is to help you keep those kiddos, but also make sure that you or I don't get kicked out of this program.
Yes.
And by that, I mean literally lose this, it's a $2 million contract. If I lose it, this place will go out of business. And I don't mean to make it like you're all responsible for that, by the way. There's 200 other people that I'm also trying to make sure, are you okay? Are you okay? Do you have what you need? Do you have the paperwork? The other day, they had 21 unauthorized guests in there. I'm like, are we trafficking? Like, what the hell's going on in here? Pardon my language. So I don't mean to make it like you're solely responsible, but I am giving an example that I could take a huge hit on this. And I don't want that to then come back to you even worse, where it's suddenly like, oh, he frauded the government. He didn't report these other 2 kids. He's not being accurate with his custody. Do you know what I'm saying? And I would go to bat for you to verify that that's not the case, but that's why I want things like these in writing. That's why I want to get Dorothy on the phone and just make sure, like, what are we not thinking of in terms of some of that parenting stuff, okay?
Well,
but I really want to warn you, I might have to get you out of that unit.
How would I be frauding the government because of the 2?
You cannot have more dependents in your household on the voucher than what's allowed for the voucher. So there's something, and remember I told you I would back stuff up?
Yeah.
So, because I know I talk a lot of jargon. There's something called occupancy limits, and your voucher is based literally on how many people are in your household. So that allows me to say how much money can I pay for. Now, I will tell you something. Usually, I want you to know, like, I am in no way telling you that you have to do anything. I'm trying to make it where we can figure out a way that I know the city and HUD will accept the paperwork, but I do want to warn you, it may require a transport to a different unit, to a whole new unit. And by the way, mold, electrical, you're already kind of scaring me with that unit, and I say I'm gonna personally inspect it. But the only thing I want to prepare you for, and I'm not saying tomorrow, like I said, we'll do short-term, mid-term, long-term, but I want to prepare you that we might really, truly have to move you. I just really want to be straight up with you about that, okay?
Sure.
Not tomorrow. And I will work with you on what that means and how long and the supports to get you there. And I certainly will not be trying to collect on rent at the same time we're trying to pay for other things, okay? So we will do everything within our power, whether I go to HUD, city, whatever it is, you and me as partners, Donna, Dorothy, whoever needs to come into this, I say multi-pronged because we're gonna have it contractual, financial, and programmatically. How can we support this?
Yeah.
My goal is to help you keep those kiddos, but also make sure that you or I don't get kicked out of this program.
Yeah.
So when I mean contracts, let's talk them through. Leases would be the place to start, whether it's renewed or not. I'm gonna give you what's called a TBRA. It stands for tenant-based rental agreement. That's an agreement that we hold with the landlord. And I want you to have that information, even if it's blank, just so that you're aware of what are to your point earlier, what are the responsibilities of the housing administrator versus the landlord? And it would also just give you a glimpse of like, oh, that's what happens when they change ownership, or that's what happens when they sell the property, and this happens to me all the time. They don't tell us. So we could be paying your rent calculations. Has anybody ever given you a copy, like there's a form, and you know, you're mentioning why even is it 30%, da, da, da. Has anybody ever given you a copy of that? Okay. So that's called a rent calc, and that is used, they do use HUD regulations for that. Anything I tell you, whether it's verbal or in an email or texting or anything later, I will always back it up for you. I might not do it in that moment. Like right now I can tell you the regulation is 24 CFR 578. Well, who cares? I will print that for you, or I will email it to you, or I will give you a link. Okay? Anything that you ever want me to support, I promise, I give you my word, I will support. Okay? If something's a landlord-tenant law versus a HUD law, I will make that clear. And then I will actually show you where to find it, or I will give you a copy myself. I give you my word. All right? And my staff will be informed as well. And if you ever ask for that, they are obligated to give it to you. Okay? Rent calc, let me think through a couple more. I think about this position, I'm pointing that way because she's out there, her office is over there. And I created, it's called the community liaison, and her entire role is to be a support to the landlords. The coordinators, Donna should be supporting you, right? Like you say. And to avoid that conflict of interest I mentioned, Donna, John, maybe they don't even get involved in these work orders. Maybe it goes to Zoe, and then Zoe follows up with TNC. Hey, I'm here, you know, is there a reason you are not making the repair? Is there something I can do to help you? Is it our responsibility? Well, no, actually it's yours. Well, we'll pay for this. Well, we can pay for half of it, or maybe we're gonna ask for a mutual rescission for Jerry and just completely get him out of that lease. We don't have a lease, but you know, in other words, she's in a position to negotiate what also supports the landlord. And it could be individual, but it could also be like the other day, she did a whole training on the HQS.
Okay.
What is it? Why is it important? How does it work? What's my role? What's your role as the landlord? So I'm letting you know this in terms of like, I am trying to think holistically how to address some of your concerns on a higher level. But also if you were to come in this volunteer idea, I just want to throw out another example. Maybe you could even consult on that. What forms would be helpful online? What, you know, knowing the difference between tenant rights and vouchers and stuff like that. So I'm really trying to think big, but also not put too much more on your plate because I know you're juggling a lot.
No, actually, that
To do is we'll come back to these contracts in terms of what I give you and what copies I give you. Fiscal, I need to pull your general ledger. I will give you this in an email, by the way.
Okay.
I don't expect you to read my chicken scratch,
Yes.
but I also like to put back in writing things I've promised you, okay?
Okay.
So my initials are LMC. I personally will review your ledger. I personally will cross-reference that to TMC, management. We will explore whether we can do an RA through the city or what powers I have. I hate to use that word, but you know, what can I approve or not approve based on my own authority and or something higher level to go to the city. Okay, so I'm gonna write reasonable accommodation city LMC, and we'll basically just compare and contrast. Fiscally,